Welcome to a wash with colour from the amazing Ashford Castle in County Mayo. Over the years, this part of the country has seen its fair share of film stars, most memorably John Wayne in the movie The Quiet Man. Later, myself and my guest, television presenter John Stapleton, will be following in the footsteps of the Duke. 1951 was a great year for Ashford Castle and the nearby village of Cong. The Electricity Supply Board brought the power lines, and the Hollywood director John Ford brought John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara to film The Quiet Man. A lot of the filming was done here in the grounds of Ashford Estate, and the locations remain a huge tourist attraction to this day. John Ford's parents were both from the Cong area, so the director knew the Ashford Estate well. During filming, the cast stayed at the hotel, and the bridge here at the entrance to the castle was used in several scenes. Joining me today to recreate another of the Quiet Man locations is GMTV presenter and broadcaster John Stapleton.
12 minutes past 1 this morning, some 8 tankers left this refinery under heavy police escort. Some of them had actually police officers in the cab, others were followed by police Land Rovers, and behind the entire convoy were members of the local riot squad, escorting them to some...
John, it's good to see you here.
Thank you for having me. Delighted to be here. One of my favourite parts of the world, this.
With a name like Stapleton now, there's bound to be a few Irish connections there.
Well, there might well be. Funnily enough, when I was on Watchdog, a lady Stapleton wrote to me, and she'd investigated the family name, and she told me that there was a bunch of Stapletons here in the west of Ireland, around Tipperary historically, and another bunch in Yorkshire. I'm not quite sure which one I belong to, but also when we went on holiday to the Caribbean, to Jamaica, we came across a guy on the beach called Levi, and one of my friends asked him what his second name was. He said, "Oh, it's a funny name." He said, "You'd never guess it." And we said, "No, go on, tell us what it is." And he said, "Well, it's Stapleton." And there's a whole lot of black Stapletons all over the Caribbean, so I've got black brothers as well. St Kitts, Nevis, Montserrat, Jamaica. So, who knows? My own origins, you know, are in the northwest of England.
Now, how would you feel if you, having signed a finance deal for, say, a £500 washing machine, you discovered that the real price you had to pay was more than double that?
As a kid, I always wanted to be a newspaper reporter. I don't know why I did, and no history of it in the family at all. And I wrote to, I think, 33 newspapers when I was a kid at school. Well, most of them didn't reply, but I followed up the letter with banging on the door of the editor saying, "Come on, give us a job." And eventually one of them did, and I spent about 6 or 7 years in newspapers, finishing up in Fleet Street, and then one day got a call from an old pal of mine in newspapers who said they were starting This Is Your Life on ITV with Eamon Andrews, and they asked me and a pal of mine called Jack Crawshaw if we'd like to go along and be the researchers, and that was it. Went along, and I was a researcher on This Is Your Life back in 1969. And the first one I did was Des O'Connor, I remember it very well. And from that I moved on to a local news and magazine programme that Eamon did for Thames Television called the Today programme, and got on screen as a reporter there.
Tell me some of the most interesting things that would have happened to you, you know, throughout your career.
Career-wise? Well, I suppose the most dramatic, really, was when I was on Newsnight for the BBC at one stage, and I was in El Salvador, actually, covering the elections in El Salvador in 1981, when we suddenly got a call from London saying, "Look, it looks like we might be at war with Argentina." You were down there, somewhere near Argentina, is it? And so we went off, and I thought all be over in about 10 days' time, but not at all. We were there for 3 months.
In the studio here in London just a moment ago, John, Dennis Healy was suggesting that the sinking of the Belgrano at the weekend might have engendered a mood of revenge in Argentina. Have you seen any evidence of that?
No, to be quite honest, we haven't. In fact, I have been amazed by the attitude of Argentine people here during the last 2 days. We anticipated a backlash against the British community and indeed perhaps ourselves. That has not happened.
It's a very interesting experience because we were correspondents behind the enemy line, as it were, the night the Belgrano went down. Being English was not a very popular thing to be in Argentina. But generally speaking, we were treated remarkably well. It was a bit of a novelty, really. You know, they used to say, well, come to dinner. We're having the enemy to dinner, darling. You know? But that was a fascinating experience. And I was there, as I say, I was there for 3 whole months.
Well, what about hobbies? Do you have any?
Well, I have a passion, and that's Manchester City. Someone has to support. No, jokes apart. But my grandfather supported Manchester City because we come from that part of the world. My dad did. And I've now brainwashed my son Nicholas into supporting Manchester City as well, even though we live in the south of England. It is a great act of faith to support Manchester City, and you need a bit of a sense of humour as well sometimes.
Well, I'll wish you all the best with them in the future anyway. But have you any interest in the arts?
Yes, I have. I mean, I'm an amateur, you know, but I like painting. We live in a big Victorian house, and you'll think it's a Philistine thing, but lots of wall to fill. So what better to fill it with than paintings? But I've got quite a lot scattered all over the house, watercolours, oils as well. But I'm no expert. I mean, I just like, if I like the look of the painting and I can afford it, I buy it.
Could you see a John Stapleton hanging on the wall at any time?
Well, who knows? Who knows, with your help.
Ashford was built in the 13th century by the Norman de Burgo family, but it has been altered and added to many times over the centuries. The estate's 350 acres of woodland on the banks of the Corrib is the former home of the Guinness family. Today it is the most exclusive country hotel in Ireland. If you want to get around Ashford Estate, this is the way to do it. The equestrian centre and the grounds of the castle have horses and ponies to suit everyone. And you never know, you might even get to meet the Duke. This is Cohan's Bar in Cong Village, where the famous fight scene from The Quiet Man ends with that haymaker of a punch delivered by John Wayne. In fact, the building never had a pub licence at all. It was always a shop, but is still something of a mecca for the film fans who come here. The whole town is a shrine to The Quiet Man, from film memorabilia to tours of the locations used in the film. "50 years on, John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara are still here." Barry Burke is a talented young painter based in Kilmaine near Cong. Working primarily in oils, his style and focus are extremely wide-ranging.
As far as I remember, I think I was either 4 or 5 when I started, and was drawing more than painting. Now I'd say I was doing. At that time, it was cartoons, things that children would be interested most of all. And from then on, it just gave me a buzz. So I just kept at it. I liked the reaction I got from that particular drawing. It's been going ever since.
But whenever I look at the collection of work that you have, and there's a lot of it, you know, it seems to me that you just love to paint. Would that be right?
Yeah, definitely. It's the one passion I've had from I was a child. All I know is I wanted to paint and draw for the rest of my life. And to do that, you had to go to college. I had the intentions of doing graphic design, because from what I heard, it was where the money was to be made. And we all sampled different parts of it. So when I sampled the graphic design, it just wasn't my cup of tea, basically. And I had sampled in the painting section, which came later in that year. So that's what I knew had to be for me, because it was just constantly working, observational painting and drawing, just everything I loved, really. I used to work in acrylic paint a lot until, I'd say it was about 2 or 3 years ago, and then I started working in oil, and from then on I haven't looked back, really. Oil is just a nicer medium to work with. It seems that it stays wet all the time, and you can work back into it.
But you also work in a lot of different styles, like you're working there with pencils. I look at some of the earlier work, portraiture, and then you have the abstract art and the representational art. Why does the style keep changing?
Well, the style keeps changing because other artists keep interesting me, really. I go down to the library in college or whatever, and I read a book or look at a magazine and flick through it. I just want to loosen my style and not stick to one particular one. Dance is another interest of mine, and I like to get out and do it as often as possible. So I decided to take this hobby and combine it with art. I just danced around, I suppose, in my own bedroom or whatever. So I took this further and I videotaped myself doing different dance sequences and transferred them onto a series of acetates and sometimes even little movie flick books, and then transferred that onto a canvas, which I'll use in a loose style and which I combined with colour and drawing in the way that I wanted, I suppose.
Yeah.
In terms of line and colour, the drawing is one of my strong elements in art, and I always believe that you have to be well able to draw both linear and tonally to perfect what you can do with colour. I just tried a portrait study because portraits I consider to be my speciality, I suppose. I started working with linear lines of colour. The lines were static, they were straight, or they were going vertical or horizontal, and they're all different lines of colour just joining up together to make this image.
Well, would you use a camera whenever you go out around the country or whenever you're meeting with people to get an image to work from?
Mostly I would, yes. Photography, I've always been taking pictures and using pictures in my work. I find them really far more interesting to work with than maybe just life. And some people don't like the idea of using photographs, but I think it's a help. You can do so much more with the photograph nowadays on computers and distorting images and whatnot. You'd be surprised how much cameras and computers can teach you in ways of seeing the world.
I personally think your work is amazing. But where do you want to go in the future?
In the future? That's a lot to think about, really. But first of all, I have to get my degree, hopefully, and maybe then on to go and do a master's. But with my degree next year, I hope to develop my style more. I'd love to work in the portrait, if there is a portrait industry, more. And if I could get a professional job as a portrait artist, it would just be a dream of mine, because it's something I've always wanted to do. It's what keeps me going. It's the subject of portraiture. It'll never fade for me, and that's mostly what I hope to do, really.
I brought John to this house in the grounds of Ashford Castle. Fans of The Quiet Man might recognise it as the home of the Squire Danaher. John, this is it, the Danaher house. What do you think?
Very, very impressive property. Lovely, lovely house.
Really old traditional farmhouse, and it was used in the Quiet Man movie. And the only change is this porch in the front. As a painting, how do you think you're going to handle it?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be intriguing. I quite enjoyed painting when I was at school, and I quite like what I call still life.
You see, in a way, John, this is a bit like a still life. You know, because we're not going to paint the whole house, we're just painting the corner here.
Yeah. Well, if I get an impression, I'll be very happy. If it vaguely resembles it, I'll be more than happy, I can assure you.
But before we do anything, John, I have to get a sketch done.
Okay.
So, I'll show you where to start. We're going to take that porchway and just... That's the sketch, and quite a nice sky. What do you think of it, John?
Well, there's a lot going on, but I mean, in parts, for example, here I've just scribbled. I don't know whether that's enough, but you tell me.
Yeah. Well, you say scribbling, and that's very true, because at the end of the day, we can't paint every leaf and every flower that's out there. We have to do an impression of what we're looking at. Otherwise, it would be too fussy.
Shall we attack the trees next?
Attack the trees is the very thing we're going to do. And if you look up there, you can see that, you know, we have various tones of green. In the trees themselves, we have a light green, a mid-tone green, and a dark green.
Now, it's interesting you say that, you see, because that's you, the artist, looking at them. I would have walked past those trees and say, oh, those are just trees, right?
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. There are three distinct shades there.
Yeah. And the other thing you have to look for is the ivy. The ivy is lighter than the background trees.
Yes.
You see this area here? We're going to keep this a lot lighter than the trees behind.
Yeah.
But we'll start with this tree here, and I've mixed a wash of Windsor yellow and a tiny bit of Windsor blue, and this is the number 8 brush.
Now, what I'm going to be interested to discover is how you actually depict, using that brush, or a brush, you know, you make those trees look as though they have leaves, because whenever I paint trees, it's just one mass of green. I can't get the detail out. So how do you set about that?
Well, looking up there, you can see that the green has a lot of diffused, darker colour running through it. So we'll start with the lighter wash. And if you turn the brush on its side, you see the way I'm holding it down parallel to the paper?
Yeah.
And taking the excess wash off the brush first of all. That's the broad wash. Now, with the brush half loaded, we can come up to the top. And you can see there, you're getting a broken outline.
Yeah.
Hold it over the top the way I'm holding it there.
Yeah.
And then you can
so I
bring
wouldn't
it down.
naturally do that either. And it's this way.
Yeah, pulling from the outside in. Keep the brush right down flat against the paper.
Yeah.
And then you'll get a broken line. Don't fill all the spaces, because you can see that there are some bits of sky coming through the trees.
Sure. Yeah, is that the idea?
That's fine. But don't come below this area here now.
Sure.
Let me give you the darker colour, because the shadows will be in the areas of the tree where the sunlight is not getting in, or the direct light is not getting in. So that will be a mid-tone green. And just by setting that in on the underside of some of that foliage, watch the foliage grow. You see, you were talking about leaf detail.
Yeah.
If the underlying wash is still damp, the new wash that's coming on will bleed through it.
Yeah, which it's doing, precisely.
Yeah. You see the foliage there? Look?
Yeah.
So I want you to do that on the underside of that area.
I got the impression we had to paint every flipping leaf individually.
We'll be here all month.
Exactly. So, again, close to the paper again.
Keep it up partially over the first wash so that it bleeds through that. And pull down. Now set a few little bits in there, but don't fill all of that light green. Pulling all the time, don't just dab, sort of drag it.
Yeah, so I was dabbing there, wasn't I?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Now you see what's happening there right away?
Yeah. My tree is growing before my very eyes, isn't it? Yeah. That's brilliant, Dermot. Fantastic.
You want to bring that down around the broken edge of the ivy bush.
Yeah.
So that you leave a broken edge for that ivy bush to grow into the darker foliage behind. Now I'm going to give you a darker one here, because in that tree there's no light getting into the foliage at all. That's a mixture of French ultramarine and a little bit of light red. Now this is quite dark. Now I want to set this in very quickly, because that's drying, and if it dries then it won't spread at all. So I'm just setting in some there and some there.
Very impressive, because you're capturing it.
Yeah.
But perfectly.
After a year or two, John, if you want to change these techniques and use your own, you're quite free to do that.
Yeah, when I've got my own arts programme.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, there we go. What do you reckon?
I think it's a good job, John. And you can see that we have a lot of varying tones of the light green and the dark green.
Yeah.
But I've got you to emphasise the darkness around the outline of the building, because that will make the building stand forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you carry the light colour right down to where it meets the roof, then there's no real contrast between the light roof and the dark foliage beyond. Well, that's the next thing we're going to tackle. And we're using a mixture here of French ultramarine with a little bit of light red and crimson. And this gives us a very bluish grey. Now I'll try this first of all. It may need to be thinned down a bit. That's a bit too dark.
It is.
With the bit of light on the roof, it tends to be lighter rather than darker. So to lighten that, you would just use a bit of water, and that lightens it out quite a bit.
Sure.
So whenever you're painting that, keep the brush coming, following the contour of the roof. As it falls down, you pull the brush stroke down, so that at least if you leave any little bits of white, it's going to replicate the fall of the roof itself.
Good.
So off you go.
Thank you.
You see the way the colours that we've mixed are separating, and you have some blue and slightly redder colour here, and it's giving the character of the slates themselves.
So that's due to the mixture you've given me, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll use the same colour again, and we'll move up to this bigger roof here, this one right in front of us.
Now, why has it got those different colours, do you think? Well, is that damp, or is it, what is it? Oh,
it's years and years of water running down the roof.
Yeah.
And there's certain things starting to grow on it. There's a bit of fungus on it there and different things.
Yeah.
And it's just staining, aging.
Yeah. Which we're going to have to depict, aren't we, somehow or other?
Yeah. Well, that's what we do. We just use varying colours.
Yeah.
And different colours within the wash
and let it just run
to give us that character. Yeah. And we have the painting surface at about 15 degrees from the horizontal, which is allowing the washes to flow towards us. So you're getting that running as well.
So even that's important. I didn't realise that, of course.
Now there's the next one.
Bit dark?
Yeah. You see?
Yeah. We're learning.
We're learning is right. So off you go with that one.
Thank you very much.
And just paint that in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Bring it across the roof like the tide coming in, in strokes downward, but moving to your right all the time.
Okay, now you've had me do the driveway here in that colour, but actually that's not the colour of the driveway. The driveway is actually much greyer, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I have a thing about grey and black. And I don't like either of the two colours because I think that they're dead colours, you know, they're dead in anything that you put them onto.
Yeah.
So I always be inclined to use a little bit of raw sienna and water, first of all, to put on a wash. And then I've got to put in some burnt sienna and a wee bit of ultramarine there as well. Just to liven that up a little bit, to show there's some texture on it.
Do you know, that's very interesting, because my favourite painting at home is done by a French guy you've probably never heard of, called Volley. It's not a particularly exceptional artist or anything, but it was a painting that I saw in a gallery near us, and I was drawn to it because it's a beautiful painting, oil painting of this lady, Victorian lady, in a cornfield. And the field is precisely what drew me into that picture. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The colours, the richness of that field that he's created is exactly what took me in. So what we're going to do next?
We're going to move on now and put on some masking fluid.
Why masking fluid?
Well, take a look at the colour of the flowers. They're bright pink and purple, set against a green background. Now, if we cover this area in green, we'll never be able to get the pink and purple colour on there, because it's transparent medium we're working with.
Yeah.
The green is going to show through any colour we put on, any subsequent wash. So therefore we must retain the white of the paper by using the masking fluid. So I'm just going to let you put those on. The general shapes, you just want to put on the general shapes of the flowers themselves.
Yeah. Down here?
Yeah. John, while we're waiting on the masking fluid to dry, we can move along now and do this bush and this other one at the side of the little shed.
Yeah, fascinating array of colours there, isn't there?
It is. There's a lot of different things happening in there.
And what are you going to apply there?
Well, I was going to use raw sienna and light red because they have trimmed that bush and you can see the top of it has gone a bit brown. So we'll put some of that on first. Off you go.
Thank you.
Bring that down at below halfway.
Yeah?
And then we can blend the green in because it's quite a dark, intense green on the underside, so don't take it any lower than halfway. But we'll just do one tree at a time.
There?
Yep, that's fine. Okay. Now you see if we shoot that up into it like that. Many's the time I'm painting trees and I wish I knew what you call them.
Yeah, no, I'm no help on that. My wife's the gardener, I'm just the labourer. I just take the stuff to the dump.
It's all starting to come together.
Yeah.
So you feel happy enough about it?
Yeah, I'm delighted. Overwhelmed.
Do you feel a career change coming?
Well, always good to have something up your sleeve, Dermot, you know? You never know, they might find me out one day.
Well, I suppose we'll put the windows in now.
Why not?
But we'll start with the panes of glass, because what we're going to paint is the reflections on the window itself. So we're looking through glass into darkness within. But as we look at that close up, it's reflecting the sky. So we're going to paint the sky colour on there first. So just with the number 5 brush and a very dilute mixture of cerulean blue and water, I just want you to paint that in. Now that top window's open, so I want you to paint it following the direction of that line there. So as you come across, keep the brush at an angle and then cut down along that side.
Why is that necessary? Oh, just to get the angle?
Yeah,
I see.
If you actually paint it vertical, the window will look as if it's closed. Yeah. Now the thing is, if you leave an odd little bit of white, that's okay, because there is a blind behind the glass and you also have some sunlight reflecting on the glass itself, so that can leave like a white flash.
Yeah.
But you see, just by darkening that area there,
that has that effect.
Gives just another bit of depth to it. And I want you to do the same thing here, but not darkening all of the window pane, but keep the bottom line straight.
Yeah. Smashing. So what next?
We'll do the little flower pots to the front of the house.
Yeah.
And
that's a fairly deep red, isn't it, this one here?
It is fairly deep. It's a mixture of crimson and light red. Let me see what this is like. It's not bad. It's maybe a little bit too red. We'll try some more
brown,
burnt sienna into that. Burnt sienna is a very rich brown colour.
Yeah.
And you can...
Burnt sienna, I was just saying brown, but...
Yeah. If you cut along the top line first of all and then bring it down to that...
That's more like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just bring it down to that little steel rim that's on it.
Yeah.
Those are like half barrels that have been cut down.
Very attractive, actually.
They are indeed.
Yeah.
You see, whenever you're doing something like that, it's very important that you cut the edges very neatly, otherwise they don't look as if they're solid objects.
Good job we didn't have too many drinks last night, Dale.
Indeed. Just be careful with the bottom part of that you don't
Hit the ground.
hit the ground, otherwise it loses its shape.
Yes.
I'll mix a terracotta colour, John, for those other pots that are there. They're slightly lighter.
How do you get terracotta?
Terracotta would be Windsor yellow and light red.
Windsor yellow and light red. Yeah.
And that's not too far away at that.
Maybe a bit more yellowy, yeah? Is that what it needs,
It'll
or-
probably lighten quite a bit whenever it
Well, oh, yeah.
dries. And it's very important that you bear that in mind, because if your colours are wishy-washy when they put them on the paper, whenever they dry out, the thing disappears completely.
So you don't worry if it looks too dark?
No.
Basically?
Just keep them dark to begin with, but obviously you're working with a transparent medium, so don't have them like oil paints and very gluey.
Yeah.
They should always be like ink
Yeah.
to paint with, as if you were painting with ink. Now, we can just remove the...
Oh, it's as simple as that?
Yeah, just rub it off like that.
I'd be scared of doing that in case I ruined all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, the thing is, you must make sure that the underlying wash is completely dry.
Yeah.
And that's on long enough now to be dry. Just try it there yourself, you see. Rub it pretty hard.
I'm
yeah.
scared of doing it too hard, you see, that's it. But it does work. What's
Yeah.
a treat?
Well, let me see. For a nice pink, we'll use crimson, water, and if we needed, a little bit of French ultramarine. But we'll just try this first of all. Just crimson, watered down, should give us a nice pink.
A bit deep, is it?
Yeah.
I know it'll dry lighter,
But
even
more
so.
water. You use water in the same way that you'd use white if you were painting in oils. If you need to lighten something in oils, you use
Just
water. If you
Dilute it, basically.
dilute it with water.
Yeah. I have to say, I'm really pleased with this.
Well, I'm delighted that you are.
And thank you very much indeed.
Well, I just hope that you've taken away some of the tips and tricks of the trade.
I have. I've learned a great deal. I mean, I really have learned a great deal, and actually, it's been a real confidence booster. I mean, I might even take it up, as a semi-serious hobby now, because it's very relaxing. It's very, very refreshing. It's very satisfying, and it's great joy. It's been super.
John, all you have to do now is sign it. So there's the pen,
Thank you very much indeed.
and down on the left-hand side.
I feel very privileged, I have to say.
It's been a pleasure.
There we are, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Join me next time for more painting in Connemara on A Wash with Colour, when my guest will be actress and comedian Pauline McLynn. Until then, I'm off to explore more of this breathtaking scenery. For further information or fact sheets on A Wash with Colour, turn to CFAX page 628.